Hey, Lee and Louise here. Look at all this beautiful pre-cut fabric. I am running behind and I need to get some quilts made before Christmas. We've only got a few weeks to go. So I'm cutting pre-cuts. The first thing I did is I am cutting my fat quarters into pre-cuts. I'm cutting yardage into pre-cuts, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. There's some templates down below that you can download from the description box. Check it out and you can get a free download. It has multiple layouts so you can get exactly the pre-cuts that you want, and there's some conversion charts so you know what size to make your quilt. Oh my goodness, we've got everything we need but the fabric. So let's get the fabric cut. We'll have pre-cuts and then we're going to start quilting. And I have a lot of ideas. There's a lot of quilts I need to get done between now and Christmas. So follow along. I'm going to have those quilts coming out over the next few days. I can't wait to get started. And I'm so excited about sharing this with you. All right, let's go. I'm ready to cut. Do y'all remember this wonderful, gorgeous, scrappy Christmas quilt? I made this last week and I still can't stop looking at it. And it's so super simple. And I started with a 6.5-inch square and then added 3.5-inch widths all the way around. Here's one block. Let's see, from here to here. And it finishes at 12 inches. And so I did some piecing. I used long strips where I could and more piecing. But notice on the block next to it, see where these two little ones are on top? I moved this by turning it 90 degrees. And so all these seams line up with the strip that doesn't have any seams. So it's such a time saver. Yes, you'll be joining these corners, but you're going to do that anyways. And if you don't want to deal with it, put in some wonky corners and then the seams won't matter. So this is really a lot of fun, and it was quick and it was easy. I love a variety of fabrics in my quilts, and that's why scrappy is my favorite. So I have pulled together all kinds of different Christmas fabrics that I could find. I have, of course, batiks, a particular favorite, some monochromatic colors, some wonderful prints. I know they're in here. Here we go. Some traditional prints and some colorful, bright, and of course, some stylized Christmas trees, some collage, all kinds of different fabrics. And what I'm doing is I'm making my own pre-cuts. So right here, I have 2 layer cakes. It's actually 44 pieces just because of the pieces of fabric that I use. But you can use your fat quarters. You can use your stash, yardage. I'm going to show you how to do all that. And in addition to layer cakes, of course, we want to have some charm squares because there's so much that you can do. So again, each of these has, I believe, 44, maybe 46 pieces. So I have more than enough to make whatever I want. And I can pair them up. I can use them all together in one quilt. So many options. And then I saved an extra piece, a 6.5-inch strip of my fabrics, and it's the width of fabric. And this is nice because this can be used for larger squares and maybe do a potato chip block or a layer cake or do some half square triangles. But it's nice to have different sizes. Just because you're cutting them into pre-cut doesn't mean you're totally defining what you're going to do. You still have some flexibility. And I cut some 3.5-inch strips and some 2.5-inch strips. So I am good to go. Now, I have plenty of fabric to quilt till Christmas. Let me show you some of the ideas I have. So I got some fabric out that I've had, and I saved it from last year because I didn't get to use it last Christmas. And y'all know I've been hanging on to things for a couple months now since the hurricane blew down my house. And now I'm able to get some fabric out and get into my sewing. I have an area set up in our new rental home that's going to keep us warm and tidy through the winter until our house is done. Hopefully not too long after Christmas. But irregardless, we're in a good place, and that's wonderful. So check this out. Of course, y'all know I get my fat quarter bundles every month from the Fat Quarter Shop. And this is Christmas last year. And I never had a chance to use it, but I absolutely love these colors. So I want to show you how I pulled colors together for this one. Now, the difference here is notice how we have some very evergreen colors and the golds are a bit on the sort of a mustard side. This is a bit different in that this has a bit of tealy color in it, and the golds are a bit more yellow. Now, in a scrappy quilt, that would not matter at all, and you could put all that together. But I had enough of these fabrics to make a quilt, though I have decided I wanted to go bigger and put a border on it. So we'll come up with that later when we talk about maybe bordering some quilts. And this one I loved, but you notice one thing? I'm going to hold this up close so the other fabric doesn't get distracting. There are patterns in a lot of this, but they're mostly muted, subdued patterns. And that's wonderful, and I love it. But I want to do some, December 23. I just wanted to show that to you. I want to do some blocks that have large pieces as well as small pieces. And these large pieces, even if I use this that has a pattern, it's going to look a little bit, like a solid from a distance, which is okay, but I don't want that all over the quilt. So I wanted to get some other fabrics to join the party here. And let me show you what I came up with. Look at these pretty, pretty Christmas prints. I just fell in love with them. And I went neutral in that I didn't go with novelty or I didn't go with blues. I kind of stayed to the same color scheme as this bundle. And that really works for me. Now, this does have an evergreen, but I have enough of this in the little trees and some of this block. And so I can work in these sort of dark evergreen blue-green colors into the quilt. So I'm excited about that. So it just adds more interest when you can bring colors that are just a little bit different, but really add to the overall effect. Now, these are fat quarters, and you can see here, let's do it this way, so I can get them all. And just look how pretty this all goes together. This is going to be absolutely beautiful. Now, bargain hunting right here. And I got super discount price at the discount store with coupons. So, I could, justify buying some extra fabrics to go with this because the prices were really good. And this is something I'll be able to use for a lot. I bought like a yard of each of these. Oh, and there's one more that I bought that I really liked. I thought this was just the sweetest print. And I don't want to cut it up too small. So I don't know if this will work with something on the backing or if I'll cut blocks out. I haven't decided, but it just sort of warmed my heart, which is on here somewhere, warm hearts. And I just had to have it. And sometimes you have those. I'm not usually into the novelty prints, but these are just adorable. I mean, they're very outdoorsy with the holly and evergreens, but I love the birdhouses with the cardinal and, of course, a snowman. I love it. So this is something I'm going to incorporate somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. But, you know what? This would be perfect as a backing on either a hot pad, the supersized hot pads, or the placemats, or mug rugs. Okay, we've got a thing going here. We're going to hang on to this because this will get used. But first, I want to use this fabric. And what I'm going to do is start by cutting. And I'm going to cut into pre-cuts. So I'm going to take first my fat quarters, and I'm going to cut them into 10-inch squares, 5-inch squares, and 2.5-inch strips. Now, if you haven't done this before, I have a free tutorial, a free download that you can get, and it shows you some different configurations of how to cut your blocks to get more of what you need. Maybe you want more charms, or you want, more 10-inch squares, things like that. So we'll look at that as well, but I'm going to cut these in the way that I intend to use them in the next couple weeks. So here we go. Let me get this together. I'll show you a couple cuts, and then we're going to get started quilting. And here's my 12-pack of batik fat quarters. I love how they look, and I've lined them up. And I just, you know what I want to show you real quick is how pretty these are. I see these as blenders and backgrounds because they're relatively monochromatic. I mean, they're within a certain color scheme and they stay there. You know what I mean? Where these are bolder prints. And look, just look at how wonderful all these work together. So if I were doing a layer cake quilt, which I am, and how convenient is that, right? I would, mix this with a couple of these, mix this, and it's just going to really change the entire look of these fabrics when they go together. And so I've layered my pieces, and I changed them out of the order they came in so that I sort of have the mix of red and greens. I missed that when I pressed, didn't I? Mix of red and greens along the way so that when I'm cutting these, I can just put them in a pile and use them, and they're not going to all be the same color. So with that being said, I did start without you. My apologies. I trimmed this edge just to get some of these little points off and to make sure it was nice and straight. So my salvages are over here, and I put my cut edges on this side and then trimmed them. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my 10-inch from up here so I don't have to reach so far repeatedly. And in order to do that, I have my edges lined across the top right on the line. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right here. So there's my 10 inches to get my layer cakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember, measure twice, cut once. Now, this is a layer of 12 fabrics. So I'm using my 60 millimeter. And right now, actually, there's a sale on the Fabric Hut rotary blades, both the 60 and the 45. So if you're looking for them, you can certainly get them there. They've got some great holiday sales right now. So let's go ahead and we're going to cut our 10 inches, but up here are all the raw edges, and there's a good chance not all of them are going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to add about 1/4 of an inch. That way I can come in and trim those. Let me get my lines here. I can come in and trim those on the other side and make sure they're square. The nice thing that I like about the Fat Quarter Shop bundles of fat quarters, they come in 19-inch. So they're 20 to 21 inches by 19 inches. And the reason that's so wonderful is you get that extra inch to work with. So when I have to come back and do a trim, whoops, I missed a spot right here, and do a trim, then I've got plenty to work with. I'm not going to have any waste or come up short. Nothing's worse than coming up short. So I'm just going to set that there. That's my 10-inch. Now I'm going to cut a 5-inch, and I'm going to put it right on the line because I don't need to add extra. I already have a good straight line right here. And I'm going to cut this entire width at 5 inches. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and again, now when you're doing a lot of layers and you're cutting with your rotary blade, whether it's the large one like this or the smaller one, you know how we often, when we cut, we kind of keep our wrist down so our hand is almost parallel with the table? Well, when you're cutting a lot of fabrics, you need to put a little bit of extra pressure, and all you have to do is lift your elbow up, and then your hand is coming down at more of an angle, and you'll be surprised how much easier it is to cut widths of fabric. So I am going to cut my 5 inches right here, and I'm not sure, whoops, I keep missing a spot, doggone it. See, I talk and then I don't get the job done. I forget to hold my blade down, and I get all kinds of things going on. All right, so at this point, I'm going to cross cut them into 5-inch. And this way, I will have plenty to work with. Because after layer cakes, I'm going to move on to charm squares. And so we're going to do this one. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I've learned over years of cutting on a mat is when you're cutting at your 5-inch, don't always line your blocks up so that they cut all the time on this line. I actually created a divot in my, what do I want to say, my mat, my previous mat, because I kept cutting in the same place, 5, 10, 15, 20, to cut my charm squares. And then after a while, as I was cutting this direction, there were so many divots or crevices carved into my mat that I wasn't getting good cuts. So that's something to take a look at and to think about. And you know, there's a lot we can do with these, so hang on to them, okay? We'll talk about this another time, but right now, for scrap purposes, these can be wonderful. Okay, so there are my charm squares. So I have 12 layers, and I have 2 piles of layer cakes here. So that's 24 layer cakes. So that's half a layer cake bundle. And here I was able to cut 4 out of 12 is 48. And there's 42 in a charm pack. So you have an entire charm pack plus a few. Now what we're going to do is cut a 2.5 inch strip. Now here's where you might want to consider your options, because this 1, 2, 3, this actually measures 3.5. And on the other quilt that I showed you at the very beginning, I used 3.5 inch squares. So I think I'm going to cut this at 3.5, and then if I need 2.5, I can just trim them down. But since I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm going to be doing here, isn't that the name of the game, right? You just kind of go into it and see what you get. Okay, so I'm going to go at 3.5 and 3.5, right? Something isn't right. Okay, that's only a quarter, that's why. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3.5 here, 1, 2, 3.5 here. So I am good to cut. And I'm going to hold everything nice and firm and use some pressure. There we go. All right. So now I have a lot to work with, and I have some options. And I really appreciate that, because when I get into my quilt and I want to kind of change things up, as you know, we so commonly do, we'll be ready to go. That's right. We need to finish this. So let's come back and finish up our layer cake. And right here, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, right up at that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to put this right on 10 inches. And make sure I get that on the right one. There we are. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, y'all are going to think I'm absolutely crazy, because I'm going to save these little skinny strips, which is why I cut them that 1/4 inch, because I'm going to use some rope and make some rope trivets and things like that. But I like wrapping them in fabric before I sew. So this is another way to use super skinny strips that you can wind around just cheap, inexpensive, what do I want to say, clothesline, 100% cotton braided rope, and wrap this around it. It's beautiful. Wait till you see. I think you're going to enjoy that a lot. All right, so now let's get to our 10-inch cut. My goodness, I'm just talking so much here, and we're not getting things done. We've got a lot to do today. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. And line up on my grid on my mat, because everything here is square. Hold my blade up so I get a good cut. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And let's see right there. And again, I have these extra pieces. I'm going to add them to this pile because they're all pretty much the same size. And then we're going to come up with something to do with those. So here we go. I've got my first set of layer cakes and charm squares and strips, and we have some quilting to do. Now I'm going to show you how to cut some yardage, and I want to cut them into pre-cut sizes of 10-inch squares, 5-inch charm squares, and then some strips. And so what I'm going to do is lay them, and in this case, I start with the selvage on this side because I want to trim those selvages off even. If I start with the fold over here, then I trim the fold off, and then whatever I have left over is going to be narrower. If I leave the fold over here, then when I get to this point, I can open that fold and this piece will be a little wider. So it's just a method I use of getting the most out of my fabric. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off the selvages, and look through your layers and just make sure your selvages are to the right of whatever line you're using. So I'm using this measurement on my mat, and I'm going to cut the selvage off right on that line. Here we go. And we're good. Now I'm going to start with 10 inches first. Again, because this is my fold up here, I'm going to start cutting down here. And I have just about 1/4 of an inch overhang. So I'm going to come up 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inches. And I'm going to go right on 10 inches. And let me just line this up here. So I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and some trim. So let me cut this up over here. And before I turn this around to cut the other side, I'm just going to cut my 5 inches while I'm here. Actually, you know what? I need to pull it closer because I can't reach quite that far. Here we go. Put that on the 5 right there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put it here. And put it here. There we are. And then I can cross cut this into 5 inch. Now this measures 1, 2, 3 plus. So you know what? I'm going to get an extra row of 5 inch squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to just set this aside and not cut it yet, because this could be really beneficial. Let me put my folded sides together. Later on, if I need more charm squares. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting all my yardage, and then I'll show you what we have and where we're going to go with it all. Cutting your fat quarters into pre-cuts is a great way to get started on some fast quilting. If you're a little late in the game getting to your Christmas quilts this year like I am, then do some cutting, get some fabrics. Take what's off your shelf. You probably have plenty in there that you can use, and start cutting up your pre-cuts. And then bam, 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 you'll have quilts before you know it. And I'm going to show you how to do that too. You just watch and see. There'll be some videos coming. But right now, I want you to get your fabrics, and I want you to download the templates down below that include different layouts for a variety of pre-cuts depending on what you want to choose. It's a free download. Just click on it and you'll be good to go. So now I'm going to take all these pre-cuts, I'm going to go make some quilts, and I'll be back soon, and we're going to talk about all the quilts we can get from this wonderful fabric. Okay, it's been fun. I'm so excited to get started, and I can't wait to see what we're going to get out of this. I've got some ideas, but I haven't finalized everything. So have great fun cutting your fabric. Get lots ready to go because we're going to be busy. Thanks so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to share my quilting with you, and I'm so glad you joined me. It's wonderful to be back quilting again. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.